Okay, so here we are, introductory statistics, November the 30th, 2021. And we need to look at the schedule. So here's the schedule. And as we can see today, we have project number 3 is due, and then exam number 6 is coming up on Thursday. So my plan is to go over project number 3 and then test number 6. So I hope that makes sense. That's the plan for today. So then the next thing would be any questions from anybody. So does anybody have any question about anything right now?
I have a question.
Okay.
So with the project, after we email it to you, do we have to set up an appointment also then? Or
No.
do we email it to you?
Yeah, we don't have any interviews for project 3.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. Any other question about anything? All right. So, what we need to do, pardon me. I'm just having trouble with everything today. But I'm going to hopefully come up with what I want here. There we go. So what we're looking at here, do I have this arranged correctly? I don't think so. Change this here. There we go. All right, that's better. So I'm going to go out to Blackboard and get our assignment here for the project. And I'm hoping that you all can also get to the information. I have it both in PDF form and also just posted on Blackboard. So what we're going to do is in class here, we're going to use a different set of categories, but it's the same process as what you would be doing on the project. So hopefully it will work for us to do this a different data set compared to what we have for this particular assignment here. So what we're going to do is in the agenda, then hopefully you can see the data set that we have, a survey of students grades 5 to 10, asking about their thoughts about their own bodies. And so we're going to look specifically here. Let's see if I can find this again. It's always hard because I always keep losing my windows. I'll find it though. There it is. Okay, so what we're going to look at today, we're going to take people who have, we're going to be looking at both mother and father. And we're going to look at category D as in David, where it says a bit too fat. And we want to understand, pardon me, if there's a difference with people who have both mother and father, and if they have a difference of opinion about their own bodies, and see if there's a difference there between other groups that have other kinds of responsible adults. Okay. So the process here, and this is coming from the instructions, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at that specific number of students and then find that percent out of the total, which is at the bottom of the column. Okay, so this is out of all the students who have both mother and father, what's that percent? Okay, so Jacob, do you have access to that information that you can tell me what that would be when we're looking at this particular set of numbers? Yes, what numbers would you put in order to figure out this percentage, which is in our first section of our instructions, that we find it out of the total in the column? Okay, so that's the number that's at the bottom. And so then what other number am I going to use there, Jacob? Okay, 1378. So can you tell me what I get for a result then, Jacob? So far, so good. And we're going to go to 3 decimal places here. Okay, 0.237. That's the correct answer. So we're looking at this. We take 1378 divided by 5824, and we come up with 0.237. All right, Kimberly, can you tell me what percent that number is?
I'm currently looking for it. I'm not sure where to find this right now.
Okay, are you in the agenda for us here?
No. You said it was on Blackboard.
Okay, I put it in the chat.
Oh, okay.
So if you go to the chat and you scroll up to where I posted the agenda, it'd be there. It is also on Blackboard. There is a place for agendas. If you click on there, you'll have a list of all the agendas, and it would be the most recent one. But yeah, you need to be in the agenda in order to see what that number is.
Okay, could you email it to me so I can use my computer?
All right. So I'll go over here to email. There we go. Okay, Kimberly, let me know when you get the agenda.
Thank you, I got it.
Okay. So if you look down at the end of the agenda, I want to know what percent that number is.
Would that be like 24%?
What would it be if we translated it exactly into a percent? Without rounding it off?
23.
No. How do you change that number into a percent, Kimberly?
Divided by 100?
Okay. No, you don't take that number and divide it by 100 in order to get a percent. Darcy, can you tell me what that number would be if we want an exact percent for that?
23.7%.
It is. How'd you get that?
You got 0.237, and then you put the decimal 2 places to the right, which is 23.7.
That's correct. Okay, Kimberly, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're moving it 2 places to the right. That gives us a number of 23.7%. Now that is the number of people. This is students who have both mother and father and it's students who are in group D as in David out of those who have both mother and father. So we're saying these are the students who have this opinion out of the total of the ones who have both mother and father. Okay, so then the next thing that we want to do is find the number in that group for the total number of students. Okay, so we have now these who have both mother and father. Now we want to look at out of the total survey, the percent in group D. All right, so Darcy, can you tell me how I would find that number, what I would use for that?
So you would use 2,462 divided by 10,072.
I would. Darcy, can you tell me what that number is?
24.4%.
Okay, or 0.244. 24.4%. Okay. So now we're going to ask the question. Can we prove a difference using statistics, and specifically hypothesis testing? Can we show that this is actually different for people who are in group D who have mother and father compared to the total of the students in the survey? All right. So, Jacob, are you looking in the agenda at the numbers that we have? Okay. So I'm looking at category D as in David. I'm going all the way over to the right to see the total number of people in that category. And that's where we got that number, 2462. Okay. So now that we have this, we want to try and prove if there is a difference between those things. So we've done the steps for part A of the project. So we have two sets of sample information. We have our assigned group out of the both mother and father, ooh, that was hard, both mother and father category. And then we have the assigned group out of the total. And now we want to do hypothesis testing for two proportions for this. All right. Now, Kimberly, can you tell me where I need to go in order to do hypothesis tests for two proportions? What do I need?
You would go to SALT.
I would. What happens when I go to SALT? Where in SALT do I need to go?
To the, let me pull up SALT. The hold statistics and go to your settings and click on the 2 sample proportion.
That's correct. Inferential statistics, 2 sample proportions. All right. So far, so good. So, Jacob, can you tell me what numbers then I need to put in my 2 sample proportion boxes? Okay. Okay, so we have 1378 and then the trials of 5824. That's correct. And for the second one then, hopefully you can see that it would be the 2462 and then the 10,072. There you go, you got it. All right, so far so good. So Darcy, what happens when we do that? What are the results? Oh, I'm sorry, Darcy. What do we need to put in for our hypothesis test?
So we put greater than?
How do we know what to put in there? Okay, Kimberly, see you later.
Pass. I forgot about this one.
All right. So, Jacob, what do you think? What are we going to do here? We have the results. I'm looking in the agenda, and I'm hoping that the agenda will tell me when I look at these numbers, what am I going to put in my hypotheses? What direction am I going to choose here? Well, the information is not flowing here, so we'll talk about this a little bit. So Darcy, can you tell me what were the percent results that we got from each of these parts of the survey?
So the first one was 23.7% and then 24.4%.
Okay, Jacob, unfortunately, your answer is not correct. 23.7% versus 24.4%. So Darcy, is the first one lower or higher than the second one?
Lower.
So that's the direction we're going to choose. So it's going to be less than. So Darcy, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So Jacob, when we're doing two proportions, I'm going to share my screen here so you can see what that looks like here. All right, Jacob, can you see my screen in SALT here? Okay. You can see hopefully that the null hypothesis is that P1 minus P2 is equal to 0. And the alternative hypothesis is P1 minus P2 is less than 0. So our null hypothesis is based on the difference of the proportions. And we specifically write down these symbols, P1 minus P2 equals 0, P1 minus P2 less than 0. So the hypotheses are not numbers, okay? The hypotheses are statements about measurements. So the null hypothesis is saying to us that P1 and P2 are the same, which could also be said that the difference is 0. And then the second hypothesis would be that they are different, and when we subtract them, they come out to be negative, which is the same way as saying that P1 is less than P2. All right, Jacob, does that make sense to you right now? The non-alternative hypotheses. Okay. So based on this, now we want to figure out what's true about this situation. Right? So when we look at this, we've done our steps for hypothesis testing. And we have a p-value. And hopefully it's clear that the p-value is 0.133145. So then we need to talk about what that means. All right. So Jacob, can you tell me what does that mean if I have a p-value of 0.133 and what I didn't put in here was that we're going to use alpha of 0.05. So now, based on this piece of information, I want to know what is the meaning of this p-value. So Jacob, can you tell me what is the meaning of that p-value? Okay. So Darcy, can you tell me what's the meaning of the p-value?
The p-value is greater than alpha.
That's correct. And so what do we do if the p-value is greater than alpha?
We fail to reject the null hypothesis. There's not enough evidence to prove the alternative hypothesis.
Yay! That is absolutely correct. Okay. So Darcy, can you tell me what that means now?
So that means there's not enough evidence to prove both mother and father are a bit too fat. Of the proportion of both mother and father. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'm going to help you out here.
Okay.
Need to know is what the alternative hypothesis is in order to know what it is we're trying to prove. Okay, so we didn't do that, and it's my fault. I should have said the first thing we always do is set up our hypotheses, and we failed to do that. So once we get to the end, how can we know what we were doing if at the beginning we didn't actually write down what we were trying to prove? Okay, so we're going to make this happen now. So I'm going to put in here okay, so here are the null and alternative hypotheses. Okay. Now we need to label these for what they came from. Okay. When we were doing this analysis of the numbers, when we did the dividing, the first number that we had, at 23.7%, this was E hat 1. Okay. And this second thing that we had, this second number, this was P hat 2. All right. So then what we're trying to prove would be something about not just this particular survey, but in general. Okay. So, Darcy, do you want to try again? Now that you have more information, I can give you another chance if you want to take it.
Sure. So there is not enough evidence to prove both mother and father were a bit too fat. Was less than the overall proportion of total population.
No, not quite. Okay, I'm gonna work. This is not easy. This is a difficult process, so I'm gonna do this for you, and you can see how it works. Okay. So there's not evidence to prove that the proportion of students with both mother and father say their own bodies are a bit too fat is less than the overall proportion of students who think they are a bit too fat. Okay, so if you're looking at people who have both mother and father, and you ask them, are you a bit too fat? 23.7% say yes. If you look at all the students put together and say, are you a bit too fat? It's 24.4%. So the question is, can we prove that there is a difference? Is it less for people if they have this particular family situation? Are they inclined to say this about themselves less compared to the overall group? And the answer is we can't prove that there is a difference between them. So if you have students with both mother and father and you say, are you a bit too fat? There's a certain percent. If you look at overall and say there's a bit too fat, it's close, but it's not the same. It's a little bit lower for the people who have this family situation, but it's not sufficiently different to say we can prove anything about it. Okay. Now, last time, okay, if you go back to the last time we met, last week, all right, we did the same entire process, but we were talking about people who have grandparents as their responsible adult. And we proved that for students who say they have grandparents as responsible adult, they actually have a lower percentage for this category compared to the overall total. So people who have grandparents for their family, it is different for them compared to the overall for everybody. But if you have both mother and father, you can't prove that there's a difference. All right. So that's what the project looks like. But instead of having mother, father, and grandparents, it has the different grades the students are in. 5th, 6th, 7th, up to 10th grade. So your assignment then in the project is to look at the grade that they are in, find out how many are in your assigned group, because every one of you guys has a different assignment. So you look at your assigned group out of the total in the grade, and see if that's different from your assigned group in the overall total. So that you would say something like 8th graders have a different opinion of their bodies compared to the overall group. And that's project number 3. All right, any questions about project number 3 then? All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take a break for 10 minutes. And then we're going to come back, and then we're going to do review for the exam. Okay, we'll start working on the practice exam and go through that, and then hopefully that'll be good. All right, so we'll come back at 5:08, right? I'll put that into the chat here. Okay. Back at 5:08. All right, I will see you then, and I will stop the recording here.